is your best? I definitely did not deserve that grade story from school. Story 1. Sophomore year of college, I was taking a class that, about 23 RDS of the way through the year, I totally checked out of, rarely went to class, hardly ever paid attention when I did, just stopped caring. Leading up to the final, I of course realized I knew none of the material. The final wasn't cumulative. I did the math and realized I needed a 50 to pass the class with a C-. I show up the day of the exam and realize, I got the day wrong. My exam was the previous day. I email my professor in a panic and beg her for a chance to retake it, or do some kind of extra credit, anything to get me a passing grade. No response. I go home for winter break assuming I'm going to have to retake this class. Haven't told my parents out of shame. Then, 2 weeks later, my teacher finally replies. Her email went something like this: I'm so incredibly sorry, not my fault. I left for vacation immediately after the exam and just now got back. It's obviously way too late for you to take the exam or do any kind of extra credit. The best I can do is take your current class average, an 89, and put that in for your exam grade. Would that be okay? So I get a B instead of the C- I was hoping for. Yes, that would be just fine. Story 2. I had a college professor where I just didn't turn in my final, and he gave me an A for the class anyways. Not sure why. I gave him some duck jerky earlier in the year, so maybe he really liked it. Story 3. Had an essay that was explicitly due Tuesday in 6th grade. I have no clue why it didn't click that it was due, not due, and only realized when my friend asked me about the essay on the bus. I told my teacher that I'd forgotten to print it out, ran home after the bus, typed it out in 15 to 30 minutes and got a 97. This started my habit of intense procrastination. Sigh. Story 4. Lame, sorry, but in 5th grade I was really excited to be assigned our first report for homework. Something about having to do research and write up a few pages on a topic made me feel like I was finally entering big kid school. Anyways, we had the weekend to do it, and my topic was tornadoes. They were randomly assigned, but I was pretty stoked to get a cool one. I spent all weekend doing research and writing up this 4 to 5 page paper on tornadoes with a picture or two thrown in, but I was really proud of it. I got a D because my teacher assumed my parents had done it for me and wouldn't discuss the matter. It was not up for debate in any way, and I've never been so crushed. Really killed whatever love I had to learn that year. I still did well in school, but my enthusiasm about learning and doing research on my own never was the same after that. Edit. Wasn't expecting this to blow up. It's a bit overwhelming in my notification, so I might be deleting this. It happened a long time ago, and I have since encountered many great teachers and mentors in my life while I was in school. Most of them are fantastic, and not all make these kinds of mistakes. Stay in school, kids. Story 5. In Year 9 U.S. Grade 8 History, we were given a small assignment as homework over the weekend. I can't remember what the assignment was on, probably the tutors or something, but it had to be around 500 words, and summarize what we'd been doing for the past few weeks. Nothing too hard. I completed the homework to what I considered a reasonable standard and handed it in. However, when I received the grade, I was awarded a D, with the teacher's primary criticism being that I hadn't written enough material. I was confused by this, since I'd written around 500 words like head asked. He told me to go away and redo it better. After getting home, I had some time to compare my work with my friends. I'd written the essay in size 11 font Times New Roman, and I had neglected to include any images. This is pretty standard for higher grade academic work, but most of my peers had used size 14, some even used Comic Sans. So what did I do? I scaled up the text, increased the spacing, and slapped a couple of generic pictures of Henry VIII's face on there, and handed it in the next morning. Lo and behold, after he graded it, I got an A, and a special mention for my hard work. I have never been so thrilled with myself, and so disappointed in a teacher in my life. It just goes to show how another person's laziness can screw you over. Edit. Spelling. Story 6. 9th grade spelling and vocab test. The word was ascend, which I defined as to gain in altitude. I was marked wrong. The teacher was looking for it to go up, like on a ladder. This was 16 years ago, and I remember this conversation verbatim. Edit. Wow, my highest comment. Story 7. In high school we were asked to write a proposal for a new drinking age United States. I wrote about how it should be lowered to 12, but people who are past 12 now should have to wait until their next birthday as to avoid millions of teenagers suddenly becoming legal age to drink at once. I cited other countries with lower drinking ages and fewer drinking-related issues, discussed how it currently has a strong forbidden fruit appeal to high school kids and that wouldn't be as big a deal. Also, kids could get introduced to alcohol and learn their limits while still being somewhat supervised by their parents. She gave me a 0 and claimed I was making fun of the assignment. Apparently everyone else only lowered it to 18, citing if you can go to war you can drink a beer, or they raised it. I actually really enjoyed the assignment and thought I was being practical, I guess. Took biology and economics my freshman year of college, and made the mistake of doing both classes in the morning. I worked swing graveyard shift. The biology class was graded solely on 3 exams. The dates for them were in the syllabus, along with a summary of chapters covered in each. I only showed up on the first day and 3 exam days, crammed the night before each time and did really well on the tests. Got an A. Economics was harder, participation and attendance counted toward the grade, and a test date was moved, so I missed taking it. Fortunately, I had a buddy in the class who signed my name on the attendance sheet that day, and was therefore able to convince my professor that he must have lost my exam. He let me retake it, and I eked out a B. Edit. For all those commenting on how their universities check student IDs, have digital exams, or comprehensive honor codes. I should clarify that this was a community college in a small town, and this happened almost 20 years ago. The school didn't issue student IDs, they made a photocopy of your driver's license when you first showed up to enroll. You never saw a computer in a classroom unless you were taking a class about computers, and most of the professors gave out their landline office phone number on the syllabus instead of their email, as they didn't all have use email. If there was an honor code, I don't think it wasn't taken particularly seriously. One of the professors once told us that the school's funding was based on attendance, which is why no one ever cared if we were late to class as long as we signed the attendance sheets. College has apparently changed somewhat. Story 8 left one high school shortly after semester break. All teachers gave me an A because they didn't have anything to go on, went to another state, and they were so far into the semester all teachers decided they couldn't hold me responsible for what they already taught, so they all gave me whatever grade I came in with. Only time in my life I got all A's. Edit sure wasn't expecting this answer to blow up like this. Now my top-rated comment in 3 years, so not only did I get all A's, but I got a Reddit A. Story 9 I had a bit of a weird teacher in geography way back when I was in the 9th grade. He was always correcting our assignments way too long after we handed them in. One time we had 2 assignments that should handed in over the course of 2 weeks. I only did one of them as I didn't really feel like doing the other one for some reason. When we got back the assignments back like a month later or something, he didn't actually give back the assignments. He just told us our grades from a piece of paper he was reading from. When he got to my desk he gave me a B for the first one and an A for the one I didn't hand in. I don't think I deserved that. Story 10 I got the same grade as everyone else on a group project that crashed and burned spectacularly. I was the only person who did any work while the other eight members of the group dicked around. The group agreed with me and signed a letter saying I deserved an A for the work I put in and that they had done nothing. The teacher agreed and gave me a better grade. Story 11 This is from college, and it happened very recently. I take programming classes and our mid-exam was to complete pre-written codes. The purpose of the code was to assign characteristics to a rocket. When the required characteristics are filled, the rocket will launch, and the completion status must be 100 for this to happen. If the completion status goes below 90, the rocket won't launch. You get the idea. I was never good at programming. I understood the logic, but writing the codes down is like writing an alien language. The exam was 2 hours, and in the span of 2 hours my completion status was a mere 20. My friends got 65, 80, even one was smart enough to change the pre-written codes and got 100. I accepted the fact that I might fail this class and submitted my exam. I don't exactly know how the gods work up there, but I got a 95 on my mid-exam. Yes, 95, what the? I emailed the lecturer asking about how I got such score, and he said though I didn't get 100, I implemented polymorphism into the codes, and he thought it was impressive. To this day I still don't know what the polymorphism is, and how in the world I could have implemented that on my program. Story 12 In first-year university, I wrote a paper in a sociology class where I mixed up the word mores, a type of social norm, and more, a type of eel, and as such wrote about the impact of eels on law. For some reason, the TA thought my eel law paper wasn't too horrible and gave me a B. She told the entire class someone wrote about social eels and that we needed to be more careful with our spelling though. Story 13 This was 10 years ago in the Midwestern US. I took biology as a freshman in high school. There was this big bug collecting project that counted for like 40 of our first semester grade. Basically, we had to catch a bunch of bugs, kill them, pin them, and correctly label them with their scientific name. To get full credit, you had to catch a minimum of 30 unique bug species. The one thing I learned from that project that I still remember, I am terrible at catching bugs. If you count the cricket I bought at the pet store, I managed 18 and received a D on the project. So despite earning A's on all of the tests and homework that semester, I earned a B in the class. Story 14 My film studies prof always stressed there are no wrong interpretations of a film, only different ones. She then proceeded to give me a 60 on an essay, because, and I quote, your interpretation of the wrestler is simply incorrect. That's not the message the movie was trying to send. Story 15 did not happen to me, but my grammatically challenged roommate at the time. We were instructed to write a how-to paper for sophomore English class. We had to pick our topics during class and tell the teacher. Someone sitting close to us came up with the topic of how to write an A paper. So naturally, my friends goes with how to write an F paper. His intentions were to write it as best as he could and receive an A. He wrote it so poorly and with multiple spelling and grammatical errors that the teacher loved the satirical vibe he demonstrated in his paper and promptly gave him an A. Story 16 Picked a choice book. Had to do a project on it for honors English class. Didn't read it, mildly researched the book, shat out a pretty-looking PowerPoint, presented fancy bullshit book report in front of class and teacher, got a dash. Story 17 English 101. I forgot that an essay was due that following afternoon but had to work and study for a more important chemistry course. Downloaded the smallest JPEG file I could find, converted it into a PDF and submitted the essay in hopes the professor would ask to send it again and it would give me a buffer time of 24 to 48 hours. Checked the grade module and got full points, no questions asked. Story 18 I did my senior project on building a computer, like putting together a gaming rig from parts you'd buy on Newegg or Amazon. Since people think that's an impressive thing, I was able to get by with it no problem. Best part is that I had already built it. I just disassembled it, took pictures of myself putting it back together, talked about how to decide on what parts to get. the core components you need, etc., etc., got a perfect. Story 19. I once spent a full 2-hour period of a 9th grade class copying the questions slowly onto another sheet of paper. It was a reading retention quiz or something. I guess she was only looking to see if you'd written anything, because I got full marks. The moral is teachers are overworked and underpaid and children's educations pay the price. Story 20. Community College English 101 class. Accidentally switched up the authors of 2 citations on a 10-page paper for finals. Dude gave me a 0. I was so upset I had a panic attack and started hyperventilating, which is uncontrollable and super embarrassing. Ridiculous, that guy. Another slacker and I were assigned to make a poster on the socialism chapter in The Grapes of Wrath, including quotes and symbolism, ADVM, lit. We are both very bright, but even more lazy, so we kept putting it off until suddenly it was our turn to present. Thinking quickly, we had a palaver and agreed on a plan. It was a short chapter, and he was a theater kid, so he would read the entire chapter out loud while I explained socialism as everyone doing their part and asked the whole class to come up and draw something on the whiteboard. So we get up front and he kicks a desk forward, stands on top of it and starts reading while I do my thing. By the end the teacher was in tears, and the smart kids that weren't slackers fumed because they knew what really happened. But hey, extra credit, TLDR, spur of the moment decision making leads to extra credit for everyone else doing the work. Story 21. Inverse teacher had this up notion of I think an A is really good. I got an A-. Asked her what I could do to improve it, what would take it beyond the standard expectation. Nothing, there's nothing else that would make this better. Then worthy is my 100. Story 22. In my college dynamics course we had a group project that we assigned different sections to do within our group. It was an incredibly difficult project, so we couldn't just completely split off and do it on our own, but there were easier sections that could be done by one person. Anyways, in a group of 3, one of our guys just never showed up to any of our meetings. We're not dicks and we get that we're busy and all that, so we just give him the easier stuff to do when he can get around to it. So my friend and I pull all-nighters until we finally complete it a few days before it was due. We send what we have to the third guy and he assures us that he'll get the rest done. We check up on him the day before asking if he wants help and he says that he's got it and he'll bring the completed project into class. Of course he walks in and says, sorry guys, I never got around to it. We were basically missing the easiest 13 of our project because he couldn't tell us he needed help. I explained the situation to the teacher, but he had no sympathy. He said in the real world you live and die by the people by your side and graded us for what we completed, so surprise, we failed. I didn't talk to that kid for the rest of the semester, even though he sat right next to me. Story 23. University. Had an 8 a.m. class. I would probably skip 13 of the time. Missed the day the midterm was given back, so I asked the prof to bring it to the next class. He starts to give me a hard time before looking at the exam and seeing 100 written at the top and saying good job. I go sit down, feeling pretty smart, and go to glance through it before class begins. For the main question I see a couple check marks, then and nothing else for a page and a half before the answer was circled with a check mark. Turns out I had done the problem a wrong way, confused the TA marking the test, and then somehow came to the correct answer at the end, so he just marked it completely correct. Story 24. I was in an upper-level political science class that had essay tests. The professor asked us questions and wanted us to explain the answers. Not bad. I filled 58 pages in a blue book and turned to my exam, positive I had aced it. I received a 63, and when I asked the professor why, he said that although all my answers were correct, other people had filled 88 pages and he had to grade all the tests relative to each other. Story 25. For my creative writing major piece in high school, I got an A. I got the highest grade in the whole class, and in every creative writing class I was given awards, I won a prize, I was praised by every English teacher in the school, I plagiarized it, every single word, not a single word was my own doing. I was incredibly depressed at the time and just wanted to get it over with, so I went to a short story website, picked the first one that looked like it was decent, and copied it into a Word document. I know it sounds like I'm making up excuses, but genuinely all I wanted to do was pass the class. I never thought for a second that I would get awards and prizes for it. Story 26. Me and another guy I didn't know too well got assigned a joint presentation on a topic I can't quite remember. I think something to do with tourism in the outdoor industry. We did very little prep work after being assigned the task. Probably 80 of the PowerPoint was made in the hour right before the seminar. We rushed together about 10 slides with info copied from Wikipedia, decided which slides we would each talk through and left it at that. The presentation went pretty much flawlessly. We somehow managed to confidently blag our way through each slide as if we knew the topic by heart. When one of us would falter, the other would jump in with some more bullshit to cover. Come the QA at the end, we totally pulled it out of our, to the point where the lecturer praised us for being so well prepared. I guess confidence is key. In the end we got the equivalent of AB. Definitely did not deserve that grade. Story 27. When I was in high school, I loved languages but was gripped with such crippling shyness I was unable to speak in a foreign language at all. This meant I couldn't do any of the verbal testing because I would put on the headphones and immediately cry, so they wouldn't let me do the French exam course, and put me in a lower bracket. A few weeks before exams, the exam board changed the fail criteria to be less stringent. I gained some confidence, and my teacher said that if I wanted, I could go for it. I took a long time to prepare my verbal presentation and had some help with preparing and practicing it, due to the tight time scale. I still wasn't confident, but the teacher was really supportive. By absolute chance, when I went into the written exam, the essay question was on the exact same topic for which I had prepared my verbal presentation. I literally sat there and wrote it all out as an essay. You guys, I got an A. Nobody expected it. It was fantastic. Story 28. I had a public speaking class a few years ago, and the first oral report went easy, so I figured I would challenge myself when doing the supportive argument one that was coming up by arguing against using the electoral collage during elections. While prepping in class, the teacher asked who went last, and no one said anything, so I replied and was told I'll be going first after the fall break. Completely forgot about it during the break and had to give my speech with no prep work and no reference sheet for the teacher. I got up there, maintained eye contact, and hit my time limit. The only reason I didn't get an A was because I didn't have my reference sheet. Story 29. My senior year of high school, I was taking Spanish 12, or the senior level course. I had been taking yearly Spanish courses since 7th grade at this point, so you would think I would be bueno by now, but no, I was not bueno. For our final presentation we had to discuss any topic we wanted for a full 15 minutes, obviously all in Spanish. I knew I would struggle, but I tried all year to actually improve. I did not. Anyway, I did my presentation on the Oregon Trail computer game. Remember that? It was awesome. I played through and grabbed screenshots of different stages. I named my players after my friends in the class. I went the full Nuve, you could say. One flaw: I didn't have the vocabulary for a 15-minute speech on my game, so I tried to cheat. Each slide was well done, but what I said was the exact same with small changes. Mi familia es. Then a verb. I even wrote note cards and hid them in my crotch while I sat and pretended they were hidden. I read off them because remembering like 8 verbs was beyond me. Mucho trabajo. I ended up with a grade that would allow me to pass and leave language courses the rest of the year. My teacher knew I was an idiot and gave me a slide. I'm convinced, so I thought I could do the same next semester, and I signed up for Spanish 13. Easy college credit, I thought. I walked in, same teacher. She took one look at me and wrote me a pass to my counselor. You aren't taking this, but Leek, go find a business course or something. So I did. Now I have a marketing degree I don't use. Life is crazy, man. Story 30. During my film class, I had to make a documentary about whatever I wanted. My grandpa had gotten dementia and I wanted to talk about his life and stuff so I could have something after he was gone. He was a quiet man, so I didn't really know much about him. He died while in production and the final product literally made my mom cry. When I showed it to the class, a lot of people teared up. 2. What do I get? An 83. A person literally died during the making of my documentary, and I get a B-. Story 31. Had to take a Euclidean geometry course as part of the core class schedule. Whole other story of frustration. It was super basic and very easy for me, however. Somehow I ended up in a class of people who just didn't understand the stuff. I didn't participate much in class, but I only missed maybe one session. Got high 90s on everything. On top of that, participation was 5 of the final grade. End of the semester the professor gives me a C. I asked him for a breakdown of my grades. He sends me a load of bullshit, which was basically your participation was lacking. The school backed him up and ignored my documentation of all my tests and chose his bullshit over my hard copies. Story 32. The qualifications to access university in Scotland are what are known as hires. I took higher English, but I'm kinder at English, but good enough to pass the exam. When our prelim, a sort of test exam, rolled around in February, I failed it by like 2 and the teacher decided that I wasn't good enough to sit the higher exam. She'd keep me in the class, but when the exams rolled around, I'd sit the lower tier intermediate 2 exam, which would give me a lower tier qualification, which is useless for just about anything. I sat this exam, and ended up getting an A. A useless A which would be no help in getting me into university, effectively wasting my whole year in that class. This was 13 years ago now, and I'm still annoyed. Story 33. I got a B on a paper I previously got a D on because my teacher didn't write the grade in her gradebook, asked me what I got and believed me. She had handed back the papers and I typically got good grades and didn't have the paper on me, so she just took my word for it. Story 34. Took an ethnic studies class in college. I scored an 88, 50, and 30 on 3 tests. I did like 70 of my homework but got an A on the final project. Final project was we had to write about a group in America that has been discriminated against and how length didn't matter, so I wrote a 2-page paper on slavery. Got an A for the final class. Story 35. I was in a statistics course my senior year of high school that I took as a blow-off so I wouldn't have to take calc. The middle-aged female professor was obsessed with my friend and I, and would let us get away with almost anything. We always joked that she wanted to do the nasty with us, but I genuinely think she might if we had propositioned her. Anyway, the 3rd trimester of the year I blew off almost every assignment. I barely did anything. I just dicked around in her class and just wrote notes on my calculator back and forth with a cute girl who sat in front of me. A couple of times the professor let me teach the class. It was a huge joke. I never actually checked, but I was almost certainly failing the course. Her class was the last period of the day, so I always hung around and chatted with her after school before tennis practice, totally and intentionally just endearing myself to her as much as possible. Toward the end of the year, during one of these chats, she straight up asked me what kind of grade I would be happy with in the class. I wasn't a greedy guy, and figured I was probably actually sitting around a 35 to 40 in the class solely from doing well on the tests, so I said I would probably be cool with like a C or something. Trimester final grades came out and goddammit, I had a 76 in statistics, which in our system was the exact cutoff for a C. Story 36. High school chemistry. Ended the first semester with an 87 average. Decided to bring up the grade, so I really hit the books during the spring term. Our school marked this as a year-long class. 99 third quarter, 99 fourth quarter, 110 final exam, full extra credit, final grade B. The district used a rarely seen grading system where the minimum grade for an A was 94. My year-long average was 93 for no B, no A on the transcript for second semester, instead a B for the whole year's class. Killed my interest in chemistry. Story 37. For my senior year of college, I took an intro psych class just to offset the upper-level courses I was in. I was the only senior in a room of freshmen. I thought it was going to, but it was one of my best courses. The guy teaching was hilarious, attractive, and had an interesting lesson plan. Plus he was a pretty chill guy. He told us at the beginning of the semester that if his test schedule didn't work for us, for whatever reason, he would let us come take our test in his office at a better time. Of course it was my senior year, so I didn't want to miss out on any parties, at least not to study for an intro psych class. He let me reschedule 2 tests, keeping an A for the class. I was completely honest with him and he gave 0 shits, even told me I better not miss anything fun to study for his class. I mean, I would have gone out the night before the tests anyway. It's not like I was going to fail the class, but I did not deserve that A. Hands down the best teacher I've ever had. Edit wording. Story 38. I had a Geology 101 class nicknamed Rocks for Jocks. The final was 5 to 7 p.m. on Friday. We were warned that this was scheduled on day 1. There were to be no exceptions. All finals were to be done, and grades to be in by midnight, so anyone graduating would know if they passed that night. During the semester, the professor had a breakdown at the beginning of class. He was using his own money to publish class notes on the web. The school would not compensate him. He then found out he was not only the lowest paid geology professor on campus, he found out he was the lowest paid teaching geologist. After his meltdown he continued on, but notes were no longer published. Everyone in the class got a B. I asked people that thought they should have gotten higher or lower. Nobody thought a B was right, but that is a grade most won't complain about. I doubt those finals were ever graded. Story 39. I did not study for my microeconomics final one bit, as I needed a perfect score to get an A, and I could get a 0 and maintain a B. My professor did the final on the computers in class, and the whole class got 2 tries. Upon completion of my first try, all the correct answers were displayed. I used my notebook to write down all the answers, and guess who pulled off an A in microecon? The whole class somehow managed to have a 95 average on the final, a school record, top keck. Story 40. 12th grade honors English at an esteemed private school. My teacher gave us an impossible reading quiz on Hunter Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I got 215 questions right, a 13. 33. Keep in mind my average at the time was a 90. The quiz was very hard. Also yes, I did read the book, but it was over minute details, and on the entire book teacher said the class average was too low and dropped the quiz entirely, helping me maintain my A average. Sadly I ended the semester with an 89. Story 41. I was a junior in college and I had to take a class outside my major, so I chose a freshman anthropology class. It was the worst. The freshmen trying on their pseudo-intellectual hats and the overly self-righteous comments during discussions made me attend probably less than half the classes. I turned in half-assed assignments and barely read the textbook. At the end of the course I sent my professor an email apologizing and telling him I would retake the class next term for a better grade. Assuming I would get a D or lower, he never answered, but I got a C, which meant I didn't need to retake it. Story 42. I got an A in an introductory Russian class, and completely failed to learn Russian. I learned how to read and write the letters. I memorized most of the conjugation and declension charts, and I got an A on every written test by extrapolating from the vocabulary and grammar in the test questions and examples. But I never actually learned to read Russian fluently. I have to sound words out like a preschooler. I only retained about 80 of the Cyrillic letters and don't remember Cyrillic alphabetical order, so it's hard to look things up, and I can't produce a single sentence verbally or in writing unless I have grammar and vocabulary in front of me to extrapolate from. Story 43. I was homeschooled in high school but had a thing where a couple times a week we would meet up with other homeschoolers and a few teachers. Anyway, one of the classes I took at this co-op is what the meeting was called was sign language. I was able to pass through the class with an A even though I barely learned anything besides fingerspelling and basic counting. For the final exam, however, we either had to give a short presentation in sign language. No, could I have done that or watch a video of sign language and decipher what they were saying? I chose the latter. It was worth 25 of our grade. Long story short, it was the story of the fox and goat, and I wrote that out in my own words in sign language shorthand. I got 100100, finished with an A and learned basically no sign language. Story 44. When I resigned from my high school to finish my degree diploma early in community college, I had missed probably 4 tests in my calculus class, not by coincidence. Online, my grade read as a 33, but my calc teacher, being the nice guy he is, decided it was unfair to give me zeros on tests I had little opportunity to make up and wrote 85 as my final grade for the resignation papers. I see him driving now and again and always make sure to give him a friendly honk. Story 4597. On my science fair project in 9th grade, it was on erosion. I spent one afternoon the day before it was due, maybe a total of 4 or 5 hours on it, including pictures and 1-hour photo. Also, the lab work in the same science class. Our teacher didn't grade every question, so if I didn't know the answer I'd just start writing a sentence, restating the question and leave it that way. A lot of the times I got full credit even though I had 2 or 3 questions that I didn't actually answer. Story 46. Back when I was a high school sophomore and in an honors English class, I had already given up on school despite doing well and being in a lot of honors and AP classes. I just got jaded, whatever. Anyways, I tended to not do my homework and would either rush to do it during lunch or copy off another classmate. Just about the only thing I would do were my essays, and by proxy the readings for these essays. I happened to not read a short story for our English class and walked into the class to hear we were having a pop quiz. In a panic, I turned to a girl I had known since 5th grade and asked her to give me enough details to bullshit past this pop quiz. She gives me a 5-minute rundown of the story with little to no details. I take the test and don't feel good about it. I know I've bombed. I know I'm going to at best get a D. I'm not happy but know I have no one to blame but myself. The next time we have the class we get our grades back and I'm pleasantly surprised to see I got a B. Not bad for bullshitting and hand-waving. Same friend asks what I got and I let her know. She proceeds to get this disgusted look on her face that I question. Apparently she got a C short of it. There is no justice but sometimes bullshit gets you far.